Welcome to Training Camp Report presented by Ticketmaster. Casey Phillips here with senior writer and editor Scott Smith here for another day of training camp. Unfortunately, not in the AC.
Where'd the air conditioning go?
I know. We really enjoyed that too much. But then we got a day off. So now we're ready again to face the heat and humidity. So here
it's
we are.
It's hard to complain when we're standing here. They're going to go 2.5 hours
We're in
today.
the shade. I'll be honest, I've got a little fan blowing right on my back. You know, they're out there in pads running around.
They're going to go 2.5 hours today.
2.5 hours is crazy. That is definitely the longest one of camp so far.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, I guess they figured they had a day off, so here we go. Work them now. So we did have the night practice the last time before this last day off, and I mean, of course, our photographers were enjoying this whole golden hour nighttime, switching up how all the photos were going to look. It was a really fun practice. Tons of fans in the indoor. Guys were hyped. Fans were hyped. And man, there were some very exciting plays that happened during this one in particular. This deep bomb by Baker and then just laying out for it is
twisting.
Devin Tompkins. What a catch. He was so hyped after that. Everyone was so hyped for him. I mean, the whole offensive sideline ran over onto the field.
I know, I couldn't see the play because of it.
Because everybody was in the way.
So I'm glad they got the highlights.
So excited, and you can see there's Devin Tompkins out there at practice right now with the wide receivers.
Devin Tompkins.
What a guy. He's just the gift that keeps on giving, especially to us during training camp in these shows.
I feel like we're talking about him too much. There's 90 guys on the roster. We got to spread the love a little bit, but he won't let us forget him, man. Every day he's doing stuff like this. I feel like he's already made the team at this point, and that's not really a surprise because he was on the roster at the end of the year, and he has the kick and the punt return job to lose. But as Keith Armstrong, the special teams coordinator, was saying yesterday, he's like, it's not really in my business, but it looks like he's doing pretty good over there at receiver too. So
I love that. It's not my business. Just gonna stay in my little special teams lane
everybody
here.
says he looks even faster. We've seen him make a ton of these diving, leaping, spinning catches. If the ball's anywhere around him, he's going to go get it. And again, he's like 5'9", but he plays like he's 6'2" with those leaps and the catch radius.
Yeah, and I'm going to say that I don't know if I believe 5'9".
Okay, he's listed as 5'9".
I'm going to, which I only point out, not to shame the roster number, but to point out
short people in general.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Not like there's any here to witness this, but to more emphasize how impressive what he's doing is that people hear 5'9", and I'm like,
I don't think so.
Sure.
It may say 5'8". I'm not sure. I'm just throwing that number out there. But in addition, like I said, he had the kick and punt return jobs last year, and he was clearly going to be one of the top candidates for that coming into this. But for instance, when they drafted Trey Palmer, they specifically said, yeah, he'll probably get a chance to compete for those return jobs too. But to this point in camp so far, I think that Devin's holding everybody off and still pretty much clearly the number one option. Keith Armstrong says he's been very quick, very, I think he used the word twitchy, right? So he's looked really good on kick and punt returns. That's hard to tell until you get to the games because nobody's really trying to tackle him. But when we get to the games, we'll see. And, we've been looking for a spark in that part of the game for a long time.
Well, and let's hear from the man himself who makes those calls and is the leader of the special teams group, Keith Armstrong.
There are some other guys that'll get in the mix. Christian Isian is another guy that comes to mind. That I'm looking forward to seeing. But as we get pads on, we just had a padded day, obviously, and went against each other and vice the other day. So, but Christian is a guy that jumps out right now.
When we know that the return jobs are always the ones that get all the attention when it comes to special teams, but there's a lot more to that unit that's also really important, and especially when it comes to guys making a roster, and it's the gunner spot. What do we know about maybe some people that are in the lead for that job or have a shot at that job, and that maybe that could be something that separates them?
So last year when they drafted Zion McCollum, they obviously think he has a future as an NFL cornerback, but they knew that he was going to be good on special teams, and sure enough, he was an ace gunner. And if anybody doesn't know, on punts, the gunners are the two guys that line up wide, not wind up wide.
That sounds fun too, though.
They line up wide, and they're the only ones that can leave at the snap. Everybody else has to wait for the kick before they can go downfield. So those are your two most important guys in trying to stop the return man, and they need to have speed and quickness and a little bit of strength to get around these guys, right? A guy that Keith brought up on his own, who could be the other gunner opposite McCollum, is rookie safety Christian Isian. And Izzy, they call him. And we've been talking about him a lot, too, because, the reason we've been talking about him is because the coaches keep giving him more things to do. Like, he's literally in the competition for the slot corner job. This undrafted rookie safety has shown enough that they're giving him a shot potentially at that job. So if he could be a gunner, too, and he keeps getting different assignments, that really helps his chances to make the 53-man roster. So keep an eye on that guy. 29, I think his number is.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of guys at training camp. We always love using the term sleeper, and a lot of times we tend to use that for undrafted guys, right? But I think there can be some sleepers, even that are draft picks. Maybe they're not the first few rounds. And one of those guys to me is YaYa Diaby. That, man, I feel like he could be an impact player for this defense.
Yeah, they're talking already about how he really has a lot of power on his rushes, and so they just want to widen his toolbox of pass rushing moves. But when you talk about sleeper, one way that YaYa might be a sleeper for us is on special teams. Like, I wouldn't necessarily think of this 6'4", 270-pound edge rusher to be a key player on special teams, but Keith Armstrong brought him up yesterday when asked, who's a guy that we're not thinking of that might make an impact on special teams? And he said, YaYa. He said, I could see him on kick coverage, beating his man and actually making some tackles. And you got Patrick O'Connor, who's been on special teams for a long time for us, but you don't see a lot of guys that size being guys that make tackles on special teams. So keep an eye out for that.
Well, we've talked a lot about sleepers. Let's talk about someone that's not a sleeper.
The opposite of sleeper?
The opposite of sleeper. Mike Evans. This guy, just when I think I cannot be more impressed with him, when I think that I've seen the peak of, like, I know what Mike Evans does, he can't surprise me anymore. I feel like this camp, he's even surprised me of, like, man, this guy came in so in shape, so ready, and is from day one, every single practice making massive plays.
Yeah, I think he's energized. And I think actually I think Coach Bowles said that about him. It's like this new offensive scheme that David Canales is installing really has caught Mike's attention and has energized him. And Mike was saying yesterday that he's going to be moved around more than he's ever been moved around before, which is interesting in terms of giving him new things to do, but also it makes it harder for guys. When you're in motion or you're just in a different spot every time they come out, it's harder for defenses to double team them. And whatever you think of how great Chris Godwin is, because he's great, and other guys we've had on this team, it's still Mike Evans that gets double teamed the most when we're facing opposing defenses. And so if you can take that away as much as possible, that's a good thing. And Mike's saying he wants to be able in an offense to run every route. He says, because I can run every route and I can produce in every route. I don't have to be just ins, outs, and goes and hitches. So he can run a slant, he can run a post, he can run crossers. He only ran crossing routes on like 3.5% of his routes last year. So there's a lot more that can be done. And you've heard guys say, many times, I'm sure, when asked about an offensive scheme, everybody runs the same routes. Everybody,
the route tree is what it is. Yeah,
they call them something, may disguise them a little bit. They may call them at different times, but everybody knows the same routes. Mike says there's a couple routes in this offense he's never run before, that's weird, man. 10 years
crazy.
Into his career,
that's
and
crazy.
Probably about 1 million routes run.
And I bet he's going to be a master at those immediately.
He loves them.
That's great.
He's
well,
energized.
let's actually hear from Mike Evans and what he talked about during his press conference.
I love what Dave has brought, a different type of energy. He's a really interesting guy, really fun to be around. And in the past, I've been moved around a lot. But in this offense, I'm going to be even moved around even more. So it'll be harder to get a double team on me. And I'm looking forward to seeing what we are able to do this year.
Well, what I love about Mike, too, is he's been getting passes from all three quarterbacks during this camp, and he's making all of them look good. They're making him look good, and I think that's a sign, again, of what an incredible wide receiver is. And just the fact that, again, his stats from all these years, he has had so many different quarterbacks, so many different situations, records of the team, what all we've gone through. The consistent thing of his entire time is Mike Evans. And so, but let's talk about some of those quarterbacks that are thrown to him. We know that the big storyline this whole camp has been the quarterback competition, and we got to see a little bit more of it on display. We've seen, especially now that pads have gone on, gotten some more insight, and heard from several of the coaches about it. So what do you feel like you've learned about this competition to this point? Yeah,
it was actually John Wolford that when Mike caught that, the typical Mike Evans end zone fade on the sideline and high pointed it and then fell on his back and held onto the ball. That was actually a throw from John Wolford. So we shouldn't forget about him in this quarterback room. He knows the offense well from his time with the Rams. It's a very similar thing. So he's a big help in that room. But yeah, when you talk about the competition for the starting job between primarily Baker Mayfield and Kyle Trask, Dave Canales was asked yesterday, is it even tighter now a week into camp than it was when we started in camp? He said, absolutely. So if you were hoping that by this point somebody would have separated one of those two guys and made it pretty easy and given you an idea, okay, this guy's probably going to win the job, hasn't happened yet. It's only gotten tighter. So I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing. Hopefully that's because they like what both of them are doing, but we got a ways to go to decide this.
That's interesting. And then I know we also learned a little bit about how they are monitoring the time to throw.
Right.
Tell us a little bit about what we learned in that area.
So the guy who is tracking every single throw, and one of the things he tracks is how long it takes from snap to the release of the pass, is actually Tom Moore, the ageless, been in the NFL for 50 years, Tom Moore.
I love it.
And of course, he's good at this stuff, right? So he's the guy that's in charge of that. And Dave Canales says that their magic number that they want to try to hit by from snap to release is 2.7 seconds. And last year, Tom Brady was throwing more like 2.4, 2.5. So we already kind of know how to get rid of the ball quickly. But he said if you get to 3 seconds, he usually starts yelling from the sideline, because if it's 3 seconds, the quarterback probably has to start moving. Like, you can't stay in there any longer than that and not get taken down. So, but there will be movement in this offense. They encourage these guys to move around. So 2.7 would be great if you find the open man. If not, then by 3 you need to get out of the pocket and then make something happen that's a little out of structure.
Yeah, because you can end up developing some bad habits in training camp by the fact that you're not going to get hit.
Never sacked, right?
Yeah, that you can make every play seem like it was a touchdown, or every play seem...
I found my 5th read on this one.
Yeah, like, look at that. And it's like, okay, this is not realistic. So it's good to know that they are really in this quarterback competition trying to make it as realistic as possible.
That's a great point.
Yeah, I think that's a really good idea. All right, we have more coming up here on Training Camp Report presented by Ticketmaster. And in this break, you're going to see the first half of a new episode of The Bay that we dropped, where I went to learn how to be a chef with Robert Hainsey.
And you take 6 ounces of the bolognese base with a 6-ounce ladle, 1 ounce of cream, and then 1 ounce of garlic butter. All right, and that you're gonna bring that to like a simmer until all the ingredients incorporate together. Okay? So we plate it like this, okay? That goes on right on top, and then it's done. And it goes out to the customer just like that.
6 here?
Correct. So and that's a 6-ounce ladle. So 1 full scoop, or yeah, if you get a half, just a little bit more. There you go. Perfect. Okay. And that's a 1-ounce ladle, so 1 ladle of that. Perfect. And then just use that spoonful of butter. Perfect. That's it right now. Yeah, you're good.
Oh, we got splatter already. Look at you even make an adjustment.
I love it. Look at the temperature adjustment. Obviously, your goal is to win a Super Bowl. What do you use that as motivation? Like, do you think of it like, I want to be that guy who won a ring? Or is your drive just to get better every day and make the team better? Like, how do you go into practice every day?
Yeah, I think it's kind of a little bit of both. Like, grand scheme of things, like, yeah, you want to be the best player you can be and win the Super Bowl. But that's like the biggest picture. And then it comes on the practice, and it's like, I'm gonna focus on 2 things today.
Okay.
My first 2 steps and my hand being right here instead of right here. And if I do that in practice today, like, it was a pretty good day, because you can only focus on so many things.
Right.
You have to pick like very specific things to work on.
Oh, there we go. Look at that.
Wow. That's incredible, Rob. Look at
that's
you.
good.
I'm so impressed. Oh, he's
So
getting
am I.
confident. He's getting it. That's impressive.
Burn the glove into my hand to get too far over the flame.
Yeah. Heat it up.
Plate it. Cool.
Beautiful. Scoop of ricotta. Yep. There it is.
Perfect.
Yes.
Awesome.
Perfect little dollop. The basil leaf, then the Parmesan.
I'll be very generous with the cheese. Very generous with the cheese.
Fine. I'll put more Parmesan on it.
Yep, and then pick off a nice piece of basil and lay it right on top. That is outstanding. Look at that.
Chef Robert. Welcome back into Training Camp Report presented by Ticketmaster. Casey Phillips here with a very special guest. I am joined by Keith Kunzig, mostly known as Big Nasty. You might not even recognize him without the face paint on, but he is our Hall of Fame fan. And as it is Hall of Fame week, what a better time to have you on here to talk to everybody. And you have officially retired as Big Nasty, but obviously not as a Bucs fan. So thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I'm very honored to be on. Before we even start this, got to give a huge shout out to Rodney Barber. Man, enjoy this weekend. Welcome to the Hall. Getting into the Hall, you're permanent, you're enshrined for life, and you're with the best of the best.
Yeah, how exciting is it to just think about what this honor means to him, to the organization, and just maybe when you heard he was going in, what you thought?
Well, when I heard he was going in, I was like, oh, I hope I can get to the Hall of Fame this year. But after back surgery 6 weeks ago, it's pretty much just trying to get mended so I can make the season. So, yeah, a little different not wearing the makeup, the war paint, but still, like you said, I'm a fan for life. And I'll probably be even louder now. So.
That's perfect. We all need that for sure. And just what is it like for you to be back here at training camp and with the fans? And just how excited are you for the start of the season?
I'll tell you what, a lot of people like, the after Brady era, I guess you could say. I'm really excited. When you've been a Buck fan as long as I have, you're used to being an underdog. And it's kind of nice if you think about it. You got the Bucco Bruce coming back. You got the underdog. Nobody knows what to expect. But I love competition. The one thing I have noticed, very serious but light. Guys are having fun out there, which is really nice to see. Because if you're having fun, you're getting something accomplished. And, yeah, I think we're all excited to see what the Bucs bring this year.
Yeah, you brought up Bucco Bruce coming back. Tell me, when you saw the creamsicles for the first time, what was the reaction?
Well, when you brought up since you were 8 with the orange, creamsicles you just can't get away from. And I think a lot of, especially from guys like me that have been around a long time, I cannot wait to see the stadium on the Lions game, as far as in October. Believe it or not, that'll be the first game I make it back.
That's great.
Just trying, like I said, trying to make the men to get through to that.
That's going to be awesome. And you're going to be rocking a creamsicle jersey, I assume?
Oh, yeah. I'm going to be wearing Leroy. Gotta wear Leroy.
I love it. That's great. Well, Keith, thank you so much for joining us. Great to see you back at camp, and enjoy the season.
Thank you very much for having me, Casey.
All right, we're going to take another quick break. We're going to see the second half of that Bay episode with Robert Hainsey.
If I asked you, could you eat all of this?
No. Probably not. I'm pretty hungry right now.
Could anybody on the line do it?
Yeah, probably.
Who?
Luke eats a lot.
Yeah.
Tristan could kind of eat as much as he wants.
Yeah.
I guess we'll see, though.
We'll see. All right, dig in.
All right, you gonna start with this crudo
Yeah, you gotta try it. You go for it. You eat all that.
thing.
Yeah. How'd we do?
Delicious. So good.
Tell me about these O-line dinners.
So every Thursday night, and then we order an outrageous amount of food. Because
You
you
all
order
order
every
everything.
appetizer, and then everyone gets an entree.
That's incredible.
So it's really fun because you get to try all the different things they have.
Did you, as a rookie, ever have to pay?
Yeah. So we do those. We go oldest to youngest.
So like the oldest person pays for the first one, and then after. Oh, that's interesting. So they don't only make the rookies pay. Like y'all are nice about it.
No, but then you have your rookie dinner at the end, which was fun.
Well, and last year had to be so stressful in a lot of ways for you. Just what you got thrown into. That was a lot.
Yeah, and I felt like I could do it too, and that's kind of why I was ready for it. And
Yeah, it's
my
a big
rookie
deal.
year, not ready for it.
Yeah.
Not even close.
Yeah.
But
The
you
last
take that
year.
year, you learn a lot, you get a great off season, and then you're ready to go when
Yeah.
you need to be.
What's your favorite thing about playing O-line specifically?
But I think what we love about it is that it takes all 5 of us, and that 5 guys being on the same page is what gets the job done, because there's 11 guys on the team, and 5 of us are kind of one position group.
Do you feel like you guys have a greater bond, maybe even than other position groups because of that?
Probably.
Yeah.
I think that's another kind of stereotype, but it usually ends up being true, is that like the offensive line is the closest position group.
Yeah. How do you feel like you did as we survey the food that you made? You feel like your post-football career could include some cooking?
I would hope so. What do you think? Well, I just said to make
That's
yours.
true. What kind of chef would you be if you were gonna become a chef now? What do you feel like? What kind of food? What would you want to do? What restaurant would you open?
I still think this would be cool, or like I think barbecue would be awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you feel like you did better than you would have thought you would have done with all this? What were your expectations?
I had pretty high expectations, but I also knew we were getting help, so
Yeah,
I
that's
expected
true.
it to like. I was like, it can't go that
Yeah,
bad.
you crushed it.
I think it's been really good. He made this, and it's phenomenal.
Welcome back into Training Camp Report presented by Ticketmaster. Casey Phillips here with senior writer and editor Scott Smith. And we are going to talk a lot about the running backs in this final segment. But we did notice, looking behind us here in the break, that it is great to see one Carlton Davis back at practice. So, yeah, that's a huge huge win for the defense to see that was only a short-term thing, apparently.
He had a bruised shoulder. So I think that's maybe a little bit easier to manage than leg injuries when you're a cornerback in particular. So, yeah, that's good. It wasn't a big deal. He's back in practice now, and you know, he's your top corner, really, or 1A and 1B with Jamel Dean, so you don't want to be without him.
Yeah, of all the people you don't want to see out, that was one of them. So that was good to see that was temporary. There he is. You get a look at him there, 24. That's Carlton Davis. All right, so let's get into these running backs a little bit, because while it was very evident that Rachaad White is your guy, there's a lot more to it than that in this room, and what else is going to look like, what is his role going to look like, everybody else in here. So let's take a look at just the options overall for this room, and tell me a little bit about what stands out to you.
Well, Rachaad, as we all know, he's going to be your lead back now. He played probably about 45% of the offensive snaps last year. Even though he was the starter for half the season, it was still pretty much an equal timeshare. He's probably going to go up more in the 65 to 70% snap range, but there's a couple other backs that are almost definitely going to be in the mix, because I don't think the Bucs want to be this one-back team. There's not a lot of those anymore anyway. So you got Sneak Vaughn, you've got Chase Edmonds, who we added in the offseason, and you've got a couple rookies. You got Patrick Laird, who was on the practice squad all last year. The rookies are Sean Tucker and Ronnie Brown, and they were both really productive players in college. Sean Tucker at Syracuse and Ronnie Brown at Shepherd. So they both had huge numbers coming out of college, and Sean Tucker in particular is drawing a lot of buzz. But one of the things about anybody that's going to work into the running back rotation, like whether it's Keyshawn Vaughn or whatever, they're going to have to be at least good at catching passes and good at pass protection. So that's one thing that, according to Coach, Keyshawn Vaughn has really made a lot of progress in his time here with the Bucs. You know, his playing time has been somewhat limited, so it's hard to see the evidence of that in games, but on the practice field, clearly he's showing his hands have gotten a lot better. He's just much smoother and more natural in the passing game, and we saw that, as I said here, we saw that in a one-on-one drill with the linebackers and tight ends, running backs versus linebackers and safeties, and I saw him do 2 reps in a row where the routes were really nice and smooth. He got open, and the catch was very natural. So that's a really good step forward, I think, for Keyshawn.
And then we talked about those rookies. Sean Tucker was an interesting one, because I think probably just talent-wise, he would have been a draft pick somewhere.
Probably would have been drafted.
But we know that he had that undiagnosed heart issue they found during the combine?
It was like, that's one of the first things you do when you get to the combine. And then the day before the running backs were actually supposed to work out, they got the results, and so he didn't get to work out at the combine.
Which is, I'm sure, had to have been devastating for him, but man, I mean, thank goodness that they were able to find it. He didn't know about it, and now here he still is in the NFL with a shot to make a roster, and at least now they know health-wise he's doing good.
He says he's fine. He's past
which is
it.
Wonderful.
But yeah, it's frustrating, I think, is what it was, because he felt fine and wanted to do all, and they held him out here just to make sure that he was on track for training camp. They held him out in the offseason, and he was really raring to go. So, yeah, he's a guy that almost certainly would have been drafted. But the silver lining to not being drafted is you kind of get to choose where you want to go, because surely more than one team was interested in having Sean come down. So you look at the running back rooms, the backfields for any team that's interested, and you go, you know what, I think there's a good opportunity there.
Yeah.
And I could see that with Leonard Fournette not being here anymore, and really beyond Rachaad, it's kind of wide open as to who's going to be getting the rest of the reps. It makes sense.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I know that we talk about when the pads are not on, that it can be harder to tell what's going on, and we typically talk about it in terms of the linemen, the big guys, but running backs are another group that really benefit from being able to show what they can do with pads on.
Yeah, because you know, there's some when Devin Tompkins made that great catch that we looked at earlier. There's nothing misleading about that. He ran down, he got it somewhat open, and he made an amazing catch, and that's all really happened and would have been similar in a game. Running backs look like they score touchdowns like 20 times a practice because nobody tackles them, right? They just break through, and they generally keep going just to get the cardio in, and that's obviously very misleading. The pads go on. There's some semi-live type of periods. There's thudding up, they call it, and then especially in the games when it's live, that's when you really see, is this running back doing well? I mean, Coach can tell us that Rachaad White looks good, is making good cuts and everything, but it doesn't mean a ton until they really start having contact.
All right, well, that is going to do it for us on this edition of Training Camp Report presented by Ticketmaster. Thanks, as always, for joining us. We will be back out here tomorrow with another edition during practice, so we hope to see you then.